What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Have you ever ridden a coaster so intense and downright insane that the only thing you could say when you got off was just wow? In fact, it may have been so intense that it wasn't even re-rideable. Like, I can think of a few just off the top of my head here, like X2, I-305, a couple others. Well, anyways, I've obviously had a few of those experiences myself, and the first happened when I was a kid riding none other than Six Flags Magic Mountain's X2. X2, opening in 2002, is and was a very highly regarded thrill ride, if you haven't heard of it, that is capable of sending riders 360 degrees forwards or backwards, all whilst traversing one of the most expensive track layouts known to history. Because of this, to this day, it is often seen and dubbed as one of the most intense roller coaster creations ever, and will make a lot of top 10 lists for the world's most overall scary attractions. But did you know that unbelievably in 2006, an even taller, faster, longer, and arguably more intense version of X2 would debut in Japan? Well, one did, and guess what? I traveled to ride it. Yup, just on that last trip to Japan, my family and I conquered this thing. With speeds of nearly 80 miles per hour and a height smashing into the hypercoaster category, this perhaps top 3 contender for most intense coasters on Earth has been throwing riders for over a decade and seems to have its fair share of lovers and haters. But I'm here today to put that argument to rest and give you a brief history, as well as a comparison to its sister coaster, X2. So what is it, and where did it come from? This is the story and my review of Fuji-Q Highland's Eejanaika. The concept for a fourth dimension coaster dates back to well before initial designs of such a thing came out, but it wasn't until roller coaster manufacturer Aerodynamics that it actually happened. In 2002, Six Flags Magic Mountain would debut X2, the world's first fourth dimension roller coaster, but lots have been happening behind the scenes to make this happen. To start, we first need to travel back to the Aerodynamics headquarters in Clearfield, Utah, and meet the man running the show. This man is Alan Schilke, one of my favorite roller coaster designers, and he is responsible for current day coasters such as Steel Vengeance, but was also responsible for the creation of X2, Dino Conda, which is a later installation of the 4D coaster, and Eejanaika. Pictured here is his 4D prototype for their 4D coaster in the manufacturing facility. As he explains it, there is a 4-rail system allotting to the rotation of the seats. As the rails vary in distance from one another, a pole is moved up and down, causing the seat to spin. This prototype, referred to by Schilke as Mindbender, is the first ever recorded 4D roller coaster. The concept seemed promising too, and designs for a legit, true 4D coaster were put in the makings. And that's when we ended up with X2, or rather X at the time. X, opening at the aforementioned Six Flags Magic Mountain, would throw riders up until 2007, before closing for its transformation into X2 the same year. But during this general time, and to the disbelief of many, an absolute monster of a ride had begun its construction prior to this in Japan. After Aerodynamics, the ride's manufacturer, had gone bankrupt in the process of X's construction, the remaining assets and files from the company had been sold to roller coaster and amusement ride manufacturer S&S Worldwide. Excited by this acquisition, S&S had then begun construction on said monster under the name Eejanaika. And so, with the guiding hand of Alan Schilke himself, some new modified designs and precautions would be taken with the coaster, and to much success and excitement, debut in the summer of 2006. Reaching a height of 250 feet, Eejanaika would ultimately prove as a statement of extremity in the park and cost Fuji-Q Highland a whopping 3,500,000,000 yen, or $31 million to construct, which I kind of find funny because that was still significantly less than the initial cost of X2's track, even before its renovations. However, as well received as it was at first, many began to criticize it for its intensity, and it shouldn't serve as a shock that some even disliked the ride. But having heard these things, I needed to go try it for myself and see, was this really the most intense coaster on Earth? And look, it wasn't easy getting here. Full props to my dad for bringing us here, otherwise I would not have been able to ride this thing. This was an absolute bucket list and dream of a ride since I was a kid, so I cannot believe that we got it pulled off. Anyways, the only thing I've really had in the past to compare it to was X2, so my comparison is as follows. Let's first look at the drops. Each acts the same way, flipping riders into a skydiving position before rotating them onto their backs into an inside Raven turn. The best way I can describe this is like skydiving, and then right before you hit the ground, you front flip and you're on your back, and then you're coming up into that inside Raven turn, as you can see here. Though, I will say, Eejanaika has smaller, lighter trains, and the drop isn't quite as sustained as X2. X2 kind of stalls you there, and you feel like you're dropping for much longer, so I think X2 wins the drop battle, to be honest. Eejanaika has a much smoother transition though, and looking at that inside Raven turn, X2 just kind of rotates you forward and then holds you there, kind of like another stall maneuver. Eejanaika, on the other hand, throws in a full-on backflip, and I gotta say, backflipping while being pulled down out of this element at such a high rate of speed is truly a bizarre feeling. Like, it just feels super odd, but in the best way, and it's just really intense. Point to Eejanaika. This is then followed by an airtime-shaped element on both rides, as you can see here, but each acts differently. X2 kind of throws you into a simplistic backflip. For those of you who have ridden it, you'll know what I'm talking about, which is still a super cool feeling. But Eejanaika does this really odd 0G roll variant that sends you backwards then forwards. It's kind of like a 360 lateral flip while you're going over an airtime hill. I guess that's how I'd explain it. My dad was the first to note that this was his favorite part of the ride and that he had never experienced anything like it. It's sort of like backwards airtime mixed with just ridiculous laterals. 100% a point to Eejanaika on that one. Like, seriously, top 10 moments on roller coasters for sure. From here, X2 banks right and Eejanaika bank left to complete their respective layouts. Each enters a fly-to-lie element, putting riders on their back, and there really wasn't much of a difference here, beyond Eejanaika just being much smoother. And then the second to last element, the outside Raven turn, is a bit more difficult to characterize though. X2's outside Raven turn is brutal, and I mean brutal. The element on X2 is single-handedly the most intense element on any coaster out there, at least that I've experienced, and it is just crazy. Eejanaika has that same effect as well, just minus the brutality, so I'm gonna have to give each a point for this. The final element is another fly-to-lie that concludes the ride, and this is just what ties it all together. For those of you who've ridden X2, you know it just kind of whips you up and then stops in the final brake run. Eejanaika, on the other hand, pushes the envelope just a little bit further and dips you forward on your stomach, then back, and ends. It was a ridiculous ride, which leaves one final question. Who wins? And I guess I would say, on a regular day, just to go out and ride like an epic, perfect coaster experience with everything done right, Eejanaika. But something about X2 is just quirky, and in a way, its imperfections make it perfect. I love X2, and Eejanaika was truly unreal and all I'd hoped for, but at the end of the day, I myself would probably go with X2. I don't know if I'm biased just because I grew up with that ride, it made me love coasters, blah blah blah, whatever, but I just feel like X2 is kind of the more unique experience. Anyways though, as always, it's been a major pleasure creating new content for all of you, and if you disagree with me, please let me know because I'm sure a lot of you do, and I do know a few of you who watch my channel have ridden both, so hopefully I didn't offend anyone. But if you enjoyed today's content, please feel free to like and subscribe, that would be super helpful. I have been in college lately, and my editor and I just have trouble getting around to videos, so we're really trying to crank it up again, and having subscribers just is more motivating, to be honest. Anyways though, my name's Josiah, Tieran's been editing the videos as of late. Stay tuned for another one coming in a couple days, but until then, we hope you guys have a good rest of your time, and thanks all for being here. Hopefully we'll get out to some more parks for you guys soon, and the Fuji-Q Highland vlog will also be coming fairly soon. We'll see you all there.